First review of 2023, it's an interesting one. This is Parker's Heritage Double-Barreled Blend Bourbon, the 16th expression in the series, and as always, it's dedicated to the memory of Heaven Hill Master Distiller, the late Parker Beam. Now for this year's release, we have an experiment with double barrel aging. I mean, not exactly something we haven't seen before, but Heaven Hill has taken extra mature bourbon and given it a secondary maturation and then blended that with an even older bourbon that did not get a secondary maturation. Does that sound like it could be a little bit oaky to you? You may be surprised. Let's unpack the details. Welcome back. It is the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C. from the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. It is 2023, so Happy New Year. I would love to get to 100,000 subs this year, so like, subscribe, and do what you need to do to help grow the channel to get 2023 started. Okay, first, let's pour this beauty. Oh, it's dark. Okay, so the details of this bottle, as explained by Heaven Hill. Okay, here we go. The 16th edition of Parker's Heritage consists of 67% 13-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey that has been double barreled for 4 weeks and then blended post-aging with 33% 15-year-old Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Now, the 13-year-old bourbon from barrels produced in December 2008 was aged on the 5th through 7th floors of Rickhouse Q and then rebarreled into new American white oak barrels with a level 3 char for 4 weeks. Then it was later blended with 15-year-old bourbon from barrels produced in January 2007, aged on the 2nd and 5th floors of Rickhouse 2. Now, at bottling, the liquid is uncut and non-chill filtered to preserve the complex flavors. The mash bill for this edition is comprised of Heaven Hill Distillery's traditional bourbon mash bill. That includes 78% corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. Bottled at barrel proof, which is 132.2 proof or 66.1 ABV. As you guys probably already know, the 16th edition of the Parker's Heritage Collection is obviously an allocated product and is available nationally and internationally in limited quantities at a suggested retail price of $174.99. So of course I have to mention the late Heaven Hill Master Distiller Parker Beam, for whom this series is named after. He was diagnosed with ALS, sometimes called Lou Gehrig's disease, back in 2010. So that means the past 9 editions from 2013 to 2021, including Promise of Hope, Original Batch Straight Wheat Whiskey, the Kentucky Straight Malt Whiskey, the 24-year-old Bottled and Bond Bourbon, the 11-year-old Single Barrel, the Orange Curacao, the Heavy Char Rye, the Heavy Char Bourbon, and the Heavy Char Wheat Whiskey collectively have raised more than $1 million towards ALS research and patient care through contributions made by Heaven Hill for each bottle purchased. For 2022, Heaven Hill will continue the tradition and contribute a portion of the proceeds from each bottle sold to the ALS Association once again. As we all know, this bottle is normally heavily marked up at stores and on secondary markets. Retailers, most of all, will price this bottle between $600 to $1,500 per bottle. Remember, the portion that Heaven Hill takes from sales is already built into the retail price, not the secondary price. So before anyone pays a high price point to get one of these, remember, none of that markup will go to Heaven Hill to help ALS. It will go to the retailer. All right, I'm excited for this one. I have heard many good things. This bottle has already made a couple of top bourbon of the year lists for 2022. Let's dive in. Which my list is coming, by the way. I need a little time off after Blendageddon was over to kind of decompress. I'll be doing my blind tasting this week to figure out who my top bourbon and whiskeys of the year are. So more to come on that. Here we go. Oh my God, it's fantastic on the nose. I'm getting a ton of like roasted marshmallows on here. So it does kind of have a double barrel, influence going on. Just thick, rich caramel here. Not light caramel. This is caramel that's been kind of sitting in the pan a little bit, almost burnt caramel. I mean, it's just sweet baking spice. I mean, there's no really other way around it. It's a tad bit oaky. You do get the oak spice on the nose, but you don't get like this over oaked presence on the nose either. Like I said, that marshmallow, caramel, vanilla extract all coming through. Gosh, it has like this molassesy pecan pie, brown sugar thing going on. I mean, Heaven Hill normally has a nutty flavor characteristic to it, but this is that nuttiness, I think in the form of like pecans, maybe even a little bit of almond, but like into like a pecan pie. So pecans, we'll say pecans, no almonds. Get the almonds out of my pecan pie. One other thing that's surprising here, 132.2 proof, you would not know that off the nose. It smells actually a lot lighter and more sweet than proof and oaky. So kind of, you know, kind of messes with your head a little bit. Let's try it. Here we go, guys. Cheers. Oh, there's the proof. Proof's on the palate. Woo! Man, but is it still sweet. I mean, the first hit is pretty much matches what I was getting on the nose here, guys. I mean, a lot of molasses, a lot of caramel, deep, rich brown sugars here. There is a very nice, rich spice to it that I can really dig. It's not, I don't think it's so much the proof, because I'm not really feeling it here. And I've talked about this before, when you kind of taste something high proof and it gets down to the chest and kind of gives you that Kentucky hug. I mean, that's usually proof and a little bit of burn. This isn't really giving me that. This is all kind of staying right here and just giving me all these rich, dark flavors. Take another sip. Little pop of dark fruit kind of pops up in the front of the palate. Maybe like a cherry or a raspberry. It's not super prevalent because the darker flavors really play a bigger role here. What I'm loving on this is the finish. You guys know I love a good finish. And the finish is really impressive on this because, just like I said before, it's not heat. It's a lot of flavor. It's a lot of baking spice. This is cinnamon nutmeg. You get a little bit more of the molasses on the back end. Again, I think the surprising part of this bourbon is how un-oaky it is. Not as much as you would think from a 13 and 15-year-old bourbon. You'd think there'd be a little bit more, especially coming from Heaven Hill. Heaven Hill higher ages tend to be a little bit, you know, oak driven, especially for my palate. Try it again. You know, the finish is saving it for me because it starts off super sweet, almost too sweet for my palate. But damn, if this is not one of the better bourbons I've had, you know, in a while. For sure. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how this competes with the Heaven Hill 17, which is probably going to be one of my top bourbons this year. But this is kind of getting up there in that respect as well. I think this would be a huge fan favorite for anyone that tries it because of that level of sweetness. I mean, let's be honest, most people's palates are gearing towards sweeter whiskeys. That's why we see so many finishes with rums and port and sherry and all these things that elevate sweetness. So the fact that this is not finished, I mean, you could say it's double barreled, but at the same time, we don't have an alternate spirit that's influencing the sweetness of this whiskey. This is all the bourbon, a little bit of the double barreling, maybe some of that toast, elevating all that sweetness. All right, so a note I was picking up when I first tried this. Cadbury eggs. Like, there's something distinct about Cadbury chocolate, and I feel like I get that in this Parker's Heritage. So not the Cadbury cream egg, not the egg you break apart with all the, you know, that weird ass cream leaking out. Let me know in the comments, guys, yay or nay on Cadbury cream eggs. You guys dig them? You don't like them? Let me know. I feel like it's a polarizing chocolate delight. I just want to know if you guys are into it or not. I'm talking about the hard shell Cadbury eggs. The ones that usually come out around Easter. I think they come out now for every holiday, but you typically know them from Easter. You know, you open the bag and it's got like the hard candy shell. You take a bite. That texture and that chocolate flavor is what I'm getting in this Parker's. It is Cadbury chocolate eggs all day long. So just for fun, let's compare it to the Heaven Hill 17. Now this does not have a double barrel maturation. This is all different aged bourbons, barrels that have just been blended together. For those of you that don't remember, this is comprised of a 20, a 19, and a 17-year-old whiskey. So 17-year-old is the youngest in here, but there is some 19 and 20-year-old bourbon in this bottle. Only 118.2 proof. So we should see a big difference, at least on the proof points here. So on the nose, the Parker's Heritage is easily sweeter. This has some really nice sweetness to it, but the Parker's Heritage sweetness level is just amplified. Like I said, the molasses pecan pie that I get in this glass, that Cadbury egg, compared to the Heaven Hill 17. Heaven Hill 17 is a little bit more oak driven. Now we're getting into more of like an oaky experience here. A little more of like a leather tobacco type thing. And I think there's some more dark fruit in the Heaven Hill 17 compared to the Parker's Heritage. So let's try the 17 here. It is so good. I've always said this can go head to head with George T. Stagg. Not even a question. It's that good, I think. I think George T. Stagg has a little bit more flavor punch, which I think people might like more. But this is more of an elegant, just a beautifully blended whiskey. All right, let's try the Parker's. So when you compare the two, you notice the proof more in the Parker's. However, the Parker's does have more sweetness, a little bit more marshmallow driven, more chocolate driven. I also think there's a little more cherry in the Heaven Hill 17, as compared to the Parker's Heritage here. I still think for me personally, I like the Heaven Hill 17 a little bit more, but I could see people liking this over that because of how sweet it is. All right, final breakdown time. All right, guys, time to final breakdown. The Parker's Heritage 2022 Double Barrel Blend Bourbon. Blah, blah, blah. All right, price for this one, $174.99. Secondary market value, as I said, you'll see these anywhere from $600 all the way up to maybe even $1,500 in certain areas. Availability, 2023. Everybody say it together. Limited. Now, value for this one, it's hard not to look at the value of Russell's 13 because Russell's 13 is obviously cheaper than this. Russell's 13 at retail is sub 100. Just not everyone finds it normally for that price. I also got to factor that Heaven Hill is a huge distillery with a lot of, budget products. So I'll say this is below average. What's the most I'd pay for this? I'm very happy paying $175 for this. Obviously it's very hard to find for that price. Now I overpaid for this because I wanted to do a review on it, but if I had to go back, I probably wouldn't go more than $200 for this one because it is delicious, but it also is a sweeter profile. I just don't feel like it brings as much of the oak balance that maybe I want personally, but man, people will absolutely love this bottle because of that extra level of sweetness. So a new category I'm adding to the final breakdown is going to be alternatives. Now, this is highly allocated, so what could be a good alternative to this one? Honestly, if I have to really think about it, I'm probably just going to say Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. Elijah Craig Barrel Proof could get into these high proofs. It's 12 years old. Yeah, not as high as this, but remember the youngest bourbon here is 13, so it's pretty damn close. And depending on the batch, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof can get a little bit sweeter sometimes. You can get a little bit more oaky. Really depends on the batch that you find. But when you find that super sweet batch, I feel like that could get a little bit somewhat close to this, depending on what batch you have. So for an alternative, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, you're still staying in that Heaven Hill flavor profile, and you have a chance to get it 3 times a year. All right, lastly, is it a recommend? I'm gonna say absolutely yes, if you haven't guessed already. I love the flavors in this. I love the elevated sweetness. If you like pecan pie, molasses, chocolate, this thing will take you all right back there. It is basically dessert in a glass. I don't see myself going to this bourbon very often because it's so sweet, but like I said, I think palates nowadays are gearing towards a sweeter profile. And I think a lot of people are gonna absolutely love this bourbon just for that reason. So if you can find it at retail or at least close to retail, it's a pickup. All right, guys, well, hope you enjoyed my first review of 2023. This is the 2022 Parker's Heritage Double Barrel Blended Bourbon. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe below. Please hit the like button. If you haven't yet, find me on Instagram, find me on Twitter. Let me know down in the comments if any of you guys have tried this one, if you are on the hunt for one. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey, it's the people you share it with. Cheers to 2023. See you next time right here on the Mash and Drum.